You run the risk, of course, of getting criticism. Of course, I'm not real big out there, so I'm pretty sure that people that follow Focus on the Family aren't even going to listen to this or even notice it. But I need to weigh in. I learned a lot from Focus on the Family. In the 90s, when I was driving school bus in northern Minnesota, when the kids were off, I'd turn on my radio on to Focus, and I got things out of it. That was then. Now it's 2023. I don't listen to the program anymore unless I catch it in my truck on the radio going to and from somewhere. But I noticed over the years something, and it wasn't until I lived in Hong Kong that two things I said out loud. One is Americans don't really want the truth. I said it out loud when I was looking out over Victoria Harbor. As many of you that used to listen to me years ago, when I had my former channel, I did a lot of videos from Hong Kong. And let me say something. Christians that follow Dobson and his ministry program, whatever, if they heard my videos, would have an issue with me. I guarantee it. And that's fine. Because I have issue with the mentality of all of that. When I started talking about American women years ago, it needs to be stated that the church has to assume responsibility for pushing people to get married, and many times those marriages have ended in a disaster. You go to the average church today, and it's all about, the old-fashioned way. Everybody get married, everybody have kids, then you get dogs, and you go on trips, and you improve your house, and then you get your starter home, and it's almost like a cult. I know, I used to be there. Only thing is, I bought my house 3 years ago, a day late, not a dollar short. Now I'm remodeling a house bigger than I need for myself in the hood. I grew up in a family that adopted me. Things were not good. I had my needs met. Then there were things I connected with Dobson. He said that if a son doesn't get the acceptance from his mother, he will end up marrying somebody just like her inadvertently. And boy, did I find that out the hard way. Dobson speaks truth. There's no denying it. But his ministry, his organization, and it took me years to realize this, because until I left America, until I went through a 14-year marriage to a wife who was so all about James Dobson, she was a hoarder. She spent and spent and spent. She went to the malls, went to the stores. Our marriage sucked. I realized the first week after I married her, I made a grave mistake. She put her house cat, on a pedestal of greater value than her husband. And I hope that Focus on the Family, I'd love it if their ministry team actually listened to this video, because their programs do not and have not, to my knowledge, done anything to spotlight what men have gone through at the hands of women. Dobson has been successful because he made a connection to white upper middle class females that all give him an applause. Snow globe households, comfort zone households. Focus on the Family is not geared for inner city poor Christians. It is not geared for working man Christians like myself, who I don't fit in anywhere in this country. America has splintered and fractured beyond belief, and I'm odd anyway. James Dobson was wound just a tad too tight when his father would not allow him to say gosh darn or golly because it was too close to God. And my grandmother was that way too. Now, I quit driving the school bus last year. I got children getting up in my face saying FDSHIT and calling me a BITCH and the N word. Last year, I was called the N word by a black student who was acting badly. And I'm trying to refrain from using profanity in this because with a Dobson type of crowd, they're not going to listen to this. Little tiny bit of self-righteousness there. And some of the issues I have with Dobson, I'm going to talk about, I'm going to break all this down. There are Christian men, Western or Wrangler Star out of, now he doesn't know who I am. I don't know him personally, but I've watched a couple of his videos and he seems to be very wholesome, very grounded. And he says Western women are no longer dateable. That's something that Focus on the Family might want to start doing programs aimed at that because they're not. And as I stated, it wasn't until I went overseas and had another failed romance. And as I throw that in there with this group of people, they're going to look at a man like me, these women. Oh, he divorced his wives. Oh, and that's the way they're going to view it. They're not going to look at the circumstances. They're going to claim I had no biblical grounds. Dobson promotes the idea that you can restore the love that was lost. How about if you got married in one marriage that you were coerced and forced by the father of the daughter I was dating in high school, and I had just become a Christian and he manipulated things? I was supposed to stay in that? I don't think so. How about the second wife I married? 14 years. Now, I made that choice clearly, rationally. I didn't slow down the brakes, though. I am to blame, as is she, that we both married in 5 weeks of complete strangers. Dumb, da-dum, dumb. I spent 14 years paying for that and an additional 15 with the revenge she got after I left her. We had inherited $250,000. I left the marriage to the house that I remodeled and hired contractors to do what I could not do. I left her with a program rental return car that was only 2 years old. I took my 25-year-old truck and things that were mine anyway, and she had the cash bag and everything. And when I left her, for 15 years, she wanted to tell me, Dobson says that boys suffer. I said, I left you. I didn't leave my son. But I did move to Washington. She had told me that freed her to move to Colorado. And she listened to James Dobson. She allowed my son to get involved with a 21-year-old when he was 14 who was butt F-U-C-King my son. He later admitted that to his mother. All of you that know me know all about that. I said, why did you let a 21-year-old dude live in the house? Well, you weren't there. He was a man. I said, man, I am a mile down the street. And I said, and my son's sitting there telling me that you don't want him to see me. And then you're telling me that he doesn't want to see me. What am I supposed to do? We're divorced. You got primary custody. If he doesn't want to see me, I'm not going to make him. And so the viewers know I was taking care of an estate. I did not have my own place where I could bring him in, however many times. Couldn't do it. But I made time to take him to lunch. He declined again and again and again. My son now is apparently trying to get it back together, and he recently reached out to me, and there's some positive things coming out. But I'm going to say something It's not Christian, but it's truth. It doesn't go well with today's Caucasian women crowd, but it's the truth. My life is a struggle. It has always been a struggle, and it's been worse the last 4 years. Working on this house by myself with no help. I don't make the big money where James Dobson and his crowd can call in contractors and spend $20,000 in cabinets. Nope. I'm sanding the 1950s cabinets at the top that were really dirty and gross that I cleaned and sanded and glossed over. And the bottom ones, I busted them up and tore them out because they were beyond gross. Dobson's net worth is $5 million. Now, all of you that know me know how I feel about rich ministry people. I've got a problem with it. I've got a problem with it. I don't believe in it. I believe in getting recompense for your work and stuff. Of course, he calls himself a psychologist, so he could say he made all that on his thing. I admit to the people watching, I am not a perfect Christian man. Not at all. And I don't think I got it together. But I've noticed something over the years. I've noticed with the James Dobson crowd, Adventures in Odyssey, McGee and Me, those are all great little videos. Okay. I used to listen to that stuff back in the day. I didn't buy them, but I heard it on the radio. The only problem I have with that stuff is I've gone to church after church after church with the white families, with the white children that go and submit to James Dobson and his thinking. And I see spoiled brat, rude Christian children running around in the church and, from Veggie Tales to McGee and Me, and I don't see them being world changers. I don't see them having a lot of conviction. I see a stereotypical cult family. They all pile up in the SUV and they got to focus on the family stickers on the back and real men love Jesus stickers on the back, and they don't use their turn signals and they don't go to speed limit. Yeah, okay, yeah. I'm supposed to get behind all that? Well, come on, Pacific. You can't blame James Dobson for the way people drive. There's a mentality that goes with his viewing crowd. Number one, they're mostly women. Number two, James Dobson does not talk about the reality of materialistic, narcissistic, nasty Christian women that OCD over their dog or Starbucks and got to have an SUV. They have cute programming and this and that. And years ago, they asked Dobson about all the money he was throwing at politics and said, do you feel the money's made a difference? And he himself said no. Why are you drumming up financial support from God's people and throwing it at politics? Look at where we are now. What a joke. You should have put it into missions. Got in the truck and went to the park today. And the Dobson show was talking about you can buy some resource about how to deal with porn. I thought, oh, here we go. Then Dobson spent a lot of time talking about porn and lust, and women get on there from their snow globe environment. And my husband had an affair and it was just terrible. It was just terrible. It was just so terrible. I'm like, really? Then you get the impression listening to this woman that she had never done anything wrong, that she was this perfect, wonderful wife. Now, After I've been around for years now and I've watched what's going on, and I've gone to church and I've been actively involved in church from bus driving to helping with Vacation Bible School to helping with Pioneer Club and doing different things on occasion, mowing the church lawn and being a member and not being a member. No offense, but most of the women in American culture are cultural Christians more than they're biblical Christians. It seems to me that Dobson's following seems to create an air of self-righteousness, railing against homosexuality and lesbianism and abortion. And I agree, they're all wrong. And I've been very honest about my struggles as a man. That, yeah, when you look at what women are doing today in and out of the church and how nasty they are, that a woman can gain tons and tons of weight, and then tell us men that Jesus looks at the heart and so should we. Okay, well, Jesus isn't having sex with you, honey. So that ain't going to work for me. If you're 300 pounds, I don't want to see you naked. I don't want to marry you. Dobson does not talk about. Christian men do not talk about. Steve Arterburn comes out with a book, Every Man's Battle. None of them are talking about the reason why porn proliferates so much in the United States. It's because Caucasian women are dead in bed. It's because Caucasian women are more into flaky plastic materialism, their self-importance, passionate with their men. You got to be kidding me. We are the biggest producer of porn in the world. Why is that? And we're supposed to have the Judeo-Christian ethic. How about when they did a study from Pornhub years ago and found that Utah had the highest number of porn hits for being a Mormon state? I don't believe in Mormonism. It's a cult. I'm not going to sit in here and get into a dissertation, but Mormonism is not biblical Christianity. Never was, never will be. It is not the church. It is not the Church of Jesus Christ, and they are not Latter-day Saints. They're lost souls, just like the Jehovah's Witnesses and Buddhists and atheists and everybody else that doesn't become born again. Yes, I've looked at porn. I still struggle with looking at it. And I have tried all the different things. It comes down to a matter of the will. And I've read all these books and self-help books, and they don't work. I read Neil T. Anderson's Bondage Breaker. I'm supposed to renounce the sins of my parents. Oh, that's great. I don't know what my parents did because I'm adopted. And even the Bible says in the Old Testament, the day will come, well, I will no longer hold the children accountable for the sins of their fathers, but will hold them accountable for their own sins. And you got these Pentecostal charismatic wackos today saying, well, you got to renounce what your forefathers did. No, I don't. That's not what the Word of God teaches. But Focus on the Family, though it has some good content, fails to look at the sins of women in our culture. Men, including James Dobson and others, have become simps. They put women up on this pedestal that we're supposed to defend them. We're supposed to protect them. I guess they're not paying attention to the women folk today. They're starting fights. They're smashing hotel rooms. They're out of control. And how about women in the Christian church? Boring, passionless, caught up in LL Bean and Land's End clothing, boring outfits, and boring Christian music, and all their little fake placarded signs. As for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. If this is what God looks like, I don't want to be there. Focus on the Family doesn't reach me anymore. There's points that I hear and go, yeah, I agree. Yeah, that's not right. I'm not here dogging the ministry. I'd rather them have something that promotes God's truth than the crap you see. But I remember years ago when I was married and my wife wanted a job that focused on the family. She wanted to be in, I guess, the department of being on the radio and the ministry team. And she went through all this interview, and a friend of ours drove her down there, and she got an interview to be in the mail room packaging up all the focus on the family crippy crap that you can buy. And I think the starting wage was something like $6 or $7 an hour. She goes, I'm really disappointed. I wasn't looking for this. It's funny how all these ministries are no different than corporate America. They got all these worker ants in the mailroom packaging up all this stuff to ship out. They get a pittance of pay, but the suits and ties up in the corporate offices, they make the big money. I just feel like the Christian business model should not be just like the world. And I tried to find pictures of Dobson's home. I'm not able to find it, but I was told he lives up in the Broadmoors, which is the more expensive area of Colorado Springs. It just seems to me that white Christian ministries and all the female followers tend to have one big thing in common: middle to upper middle class, snow globe cultures, dying Easter eggs and Christmas trees and all the trappings of paganism that Dobson and others fail to repudiate. Just the word Easter is nothing Christian. Christmas is nothing Christian. The disciples never taught it. The disciples didn't celebrate Christmas. The ignorance of Christians in this country knows no bounds. And all these organizations want to focus on porn and focus on porn and focus on porn. And before anybody doubts me, yeah, porn's wrong. The Bible says there must not even be a hint of sexual immorality among you. There's more than just a hint. I live in it every day. My mind. Women aren't going to date me. The women in the church and your more stalwart, upright, uptighty churches, oh, you've been divorced. No, can't marry you. There is no help for people like me. 57 in a church. Everything's family oriented, kid friendly, Awanas, all the clubs. And there I am, that single guy sitting in church. Hi, we're so glad you could come today. That's it. I no longer get involved in church. I treat it like a drive-through restaurant. I go up, hear the sermon, sing a couple songs, go home. There's no point in being involved. There's no connectivity for me. There's none to be had. This is an indictment on the church. And I've been made to feel guilt all my life by an ungodly, unchristian mother. And when I got out there in the church, in the Christian church, I didn't find the love I thought I would find. I was on a Facebook page for school bus drivers a couple of years ago when I was driving school bus. And I took a picture of me in front of my bus with my long hair and my chain around my neck. I said, greetings from Georgia. This is a really interesting thing that happened because it became an experiment that I wasn't trying to create an experiment, but this is the truth. Women laughed and put laugh emojis and really rude and hateful comments. This is the 70s, get a haircut. What's with that chain? That can be used as a weapon. They let this guy drive a bus? So I clicked on every one of those rude comments and pulled up the page. White women supported conservative politics, had crosses and Easter eggs and Jesus is the reason. And as for me and my house, all the focus on the family trappings. And I'm saying greetings as a fellow bus driver and all those white women that drove a bus calling themselves Christians, not knowing whether I am one or not, judging my hair and my necklace. And it hit me like a freight train. I wonder if James Dobson's father would have had a problem with my hair the way it is and my necklace. This is why organizations like Focus on the Family don't reach me and all this younger generation. It's interesting that they never talk about what it says in the Bible about a Nazirite vow, and I know we're not under that anymore, but God did not say that men needed to cut their hair in order to be holy. I know Dobson would have a problem with this. Sometimes I go to the club and dance and my shirt's off shoulder. Well, that's effeminate. I know he'd have a problem with that. But when I became a Christian, it didn't take me long to realize that group of people tend to be very judgmental, wringing their hands about how bad the world is getting, and it is getting bad. Even I feel it. I went to the park today alone. Most of my life is alone, except when I go to work. I work with lots of people and children. And the children love me. And I live in a world that's really screwed up. And I get so tired of ministries banging away at porn as if that's the big giant problem out there. No offense, but these women in Christendom, the white Caucasian snow globe women, need to realize, I know you want your husband to have eyes for you only, but you might want to start making yourself more desirable so that he does. When you grow out like this, and you keep spending money on all this crippy crap and solar plastic flowers in your window, and you wonder why your husband's tuned out and gone downstairs and playing with his thing in front of the computer, that might have something to do with it. There's a woman I know that I work with. We also attended the same church here in the South. I saw her on Facebook picture. She was beautiful, and then she got big. And she would always come up, oh, yeah, my husband's an alcoholic. He got an alcoholism. He's got a spirit of alcohol and very judgmental. And I just looked at her shape and I thought, yeah, he probably went and drank because he can't have sex with you, but he doesn't want to get a divorce because he'll be taken to the cleaners. And now he's got to be married to somebody who he doesn't have a sexual attraction for, and he's probably drowning himself. She came into work one day 6-7 months ago, and I said, whoa, you slimmed down. She goes, yeah, God really spoke to me. I said, that's awesome. That is really awesome. If you ever listen to McGee and Me and Adventures in Odyssey, they're good. They're good. But, and I don't mean to be rude. All the media is complaining that, about racism and this and that. Focus on the Family does not. It only goes to one group of people. And what I'm trying to say is there's not too many blacks or Asians or Mexicans that are going to listen to Adventures in Odyssey and McGee and Me. They're just not, because it's so white, so materialistically white privilege. And when I say white privilege, I'm not agreeing with the blacks that my race privilege that. No. I'm talking about white privilege in the Christian realm, where Adventures in Odyssey and McGee and Me is going to cater to kids, Mr. Whitaker and stuff, to people who got a lot more money than I've got. I listen to the programs. They're just loaded with, this is not like watching Bugs Bunny or growing up on cartoons or Felix the Cat, that blacks, whites, Asians, and Mexicans, Speedy Gonzalez, we all grew up watching. This ministry is targeting a specific group financial wise. And it just happens to be Lily White. And Focus on the Family's team needs to be aware that even though you may have perfect marriages, most of the white men in this country do not. And a lot of us that were married and tried to follow biblical protocol, it didn't work. And I left my wife that I made a choice to marry after 14 years. And because she listens to a program like yours, beating up on the men and saying deadbeat dads and dads out of the picture, which that wasn't who I was. And she's got to come back when she was anything but spiritual and committed to walking close to God. She drowned herself in alcoholism for a while. She turned my son against me and said horrible things to him, which the divorce courts in Minnesota said, parents, you're divorced, don't be talking about each other. She wasted no time in disregarding the advice. Allows a 21-year-old man who had a thing for my son at 14. Where are the programs on Focus on the Family interviewing me? They don't want me on that show. That would upset the tea cart real quick. So I am not a big fan of James Dobson and friends. I'll hate the guy. If a persecution broke out against him and Christians, I'd say, leave us alone. But I don't like him. He's another fat cat in Christendom that's got his snow globe culture and his so-called homespun advice. He's not reaching where the problems are. He's catering to a self-righteous upper middle class that wants to be edutained with happy little videos that make their little kitties good. And it's to me, it's sickening. It's sick. And that kind of people thinks that Christians ought to look this way, have this kind of a haircut, wear these kind of a clothes. I went to church with this on. Most of the people in there are black that dressed to the nines. And it took a bold step for me to do that because I said, you know what? I'm not here to play some little game. I'm here to hear something from God that will challenge me to get closer to the burning bush of Him. And I can't get it to Focus on the Family and all these nice little contrived, prescripted radio programs. Now, that's right. Coming up next, Dr. Stanley's going to tell you and bring us. Wow, we have to have an announcer now and all these little commercials in the program and make it just like the secular world out there. That's what I like about my videos. We go straight to Pacific. We don't beat around the bush. We don't do all this Stay Puffed, frosting and sprinkles trim. I'm the rough cut 2x4. If you grab it with your hand real fast, you're going to have a handful of slivers. That's the way it should be. Because there's people just like me that are tired of all that candy-coated, caramelized, glazed. And that's just my opinion, folks. That's just my opinion. That I had to break free. That for me to say the things I said, if I'd have said this in a white evangelical church years ago, they would have looked at me like I had been possessed with the devil. Now, Focus on the Family is not for everybody. It's a guy. It's a persona that had a cult following. Just like I have a following. Doesn't make us right. But I know that I speak the truth. And I don't care what any of these people say. You can read all these resource guides. Until God changes this right here, all the little games that you play to try to beat down something really don't work. Now, I don't care how many churches you go to, how many Bible conferences and revivals and buying of materials and Arterburn's books. I know people that have been through all this and they said, man, Mike, I lost because God wired us to be turned on by sight. You go back to a different age, the women weren't showing what they show now. Now it's all over the internet. You know, Dobson was trying to fight for Hollywood to get their act together, make more wholesome movies. Are you serious? Hollywood is not our friend. Why are Christians, now you got Christians that want to sit home and watch Hallmark Channel. Why don't you get off the Hallmark Channel and get out and engage with the culture? I dare you. But no, Dobson focused on the family. They're for those nice, neat little households where dad goes off and makes big pots of money and mom gets to stay home all day and play with children. I don't live in that reality. No, I don't. It'd be nice to see Dobson and them turn their ministry on its head and start dealing with the fact, why have American women become so awful to marry? Why are they so nasty, so in denial, so boring? America's running around having sex, but there's no intimacy. I had to move to Hong Kong to learn that there's a difference between having sex and making love. And it just gets old listening that, sex in the marriage is okay, and you got to protect that, and the marriage bed is undefiled, and they say all that. And they lie to us. The churches, they quote scripture, which is scripture. He who obtains a good wife or finds a good wife obtains favor from the Lord. But how many ministries talk about this? What God has joined together, let not man separate. We join ourselves together. And you know what it says in the Bible? Let's run with scripture here. If the Lord doesn't build the house, they that labor in vain. If we run out and marry somebody and God didn't join us together, all the focus on the family, psychobabble, self-help books aren't going to work. This thing's going into the sea and the sand it was built on. And that's why I left the marriage that I rushed into. To this day, I have an ex who goes to everybody. She's a focus on the family disciple. She never took any ownership as having primary custody when my son was 7 and I divorced her for the crap that she did. That really ruined his footing. She allowed him to play violent video games. She allowed him to dye Easter eggs. She allowed him to watch movies and stuff that I said, we're not doing this. Where's focus on the family for us men? No. The ministry needs to change its name. Focus on the female. Because it's always about the women, and the poor women and men are bad and they're monsters if they have an affair. This is coming from a self-righteous man who maybe had no libido, or he was really satisfied with his wife, or he's lying to himself and trying to put that and project that onto every one of us. We're not all wired the same way, James. And you can go on and quote scripture and beat us over the head with it. Some people's struggle is way more intense than anything you've ever experienced with that. And no offense, there's a lot of older generation. They were content with certain things. That's great. I'm not one of them. And I like old stuff. Man, I just stripped the 1950s door. Took me all day to hang it. I was running into problems with the wall in the house wasn't level. It had a lean this way and a lean this way. And when I put the jamb in, the door wanted to swing open on by. I'm like, you know what? This is going to be a long day. And a lot of junk came out of my mouth and throwing stuff. And finally, after working shims and shifting this and that, I got the door to work. And today I'm almost halfway done. I put 2 coats of varnish on the one side and wait for the other dry and put a second coat on that. Old is good. If I wasn't such a angry person inside of the stuff that I've been through. And Dobson doesn't talk about that. Doesn't talk about I was rejected by my first mother at 4 months of age, adopted by a mother who smoked and breathed that over my crib and my face, a mother who was not warm. Gee, you think that Dobson's men could get out of their element and have a guy like me on there? They won't do it because they don't want a wild horse. My Chinese, and I don't believe in zodiac, but I do believe after living in Hong Kong for a year that the Chinese animal for me is a horse for my year 1966. And it's funny when you read about the horse, I see everything there. And we don't want to be fenced in. We want to run. We want to be free. And the Bible talks about there's a slavery. We can be slaves of sin, and sometimes Michael is a slave to his lust. I'm honest about that. But what about the focus on the family camp? Maybe they're not out all masturbating and looking at porn, which is awesome. If I discover the secret of how to just stop that and not desire it anymore, I'll pass it on to you. Because there are times I've looked down between my legs and said, you know what? When you stop working, it's going to be a good day. Who wants to marry a woman today in this culture? I don't want to focus on a family. The last thing I want is kids. Did you see what's going on cruise ships now? Those little bistros that are open all night and the kids are jumping up on the tables and running loose. And now the cruise ship companies are now saying if your kids act up, you're going to be fined $500. You know, the captain and his crew can grab that kid and throw him in the brig. Say, we're going to wait for your parents to get you. I mean, it's ridiculous. These kids are out of control. And these slick, polished, bringing to you, focus on the family materials. You can raise godly kids in your home. Home. How many kids down here don't have a home? This caters to upper white middle class people. I've been around the focus on the family crowd. I've been around the middle class white Christians. None of them are in my life to this day. None. Because they don't care. They're into their little comfort world. They're not into people like me that don't fit whatever they think I ought to be. Yeah, I have some anger about that. I do. All this fixation and focus on porn. Flip the script, Dobson and family and friends, and start asking yourself, why are the men lusting? You portray them as, this is really a sin. But you don't bother to ask, are the women they're married to help and drive them there? How about us single men? They can't get a date today because I don't earn enough money. And what is Dobson promoting? Men that are rich and can go out and be the man and make the big money while the wife can stay at home all day. Okay, that doesn't work today. So a woman shouldn't marry me. I've got enough. I bought a house, paid cash for it. Don't need to tell you what I paid for it, but I got it for a song. And you know what? I've had to put my blood, sweat, and tears in this. This place was a wreck. And you want to know what? It was predominantly women, black women that lived here. Rats in the walls that shoot up the studs. The house was filthy, stinky, nasty, gross. And I've watched women wreck homes literally, spiritually, and emotionally. And I look at my own mother. Now she's a staunch Catholic to this day. She's never apologized to me. I haven't talked to her since my 30s. I cut the cord and said, I'm done with this foolishness. She doesn't even know I live in Georgia. Doesn't even know I bought a house. Doesn't know about my struggles. Doesn't care. Focus on the family? Man, I drive in traffic. I drove a 40-foot bus. I drive my pickup, and you see the minivans in front of me with Jesus and the cross and their stick figures of all their children. Are these nice people? They raise their kids to be spoiled brats, materialistic. They can't use the turn signal. They can't follow the speed limit. And they get out. I'm minding my own business and walk down an aisle. Dad, why does he got a chain around his neck? I walk fast, so I don't usually get to hear, because I cruise right on down the aisle to do my shopping. What does Christianity look like? Does it look like James Dobson? Does it look like minivan family with their stick figure decals on the back? Does it look like this? No. People fail because Jesus chose 12 disciples. And if you look at that menu of those 12, it's rather startling. He picked every one of the groups of people that don't get along with each other. Fishermen, tax collectors. Yeah. And it's interesting that Jesus didn't come to the polished, prescripted, smooth, glossy production people. His birth was heralded by angels to, of all people, the shepherds. I praise God because it's only him that gives me hope. These ministries discourage me. I can't live up to their perfect self-righteous standard. Oh, I said, golly, darn it, dang it, damn it. I'm done. I didn't please the almighty Dobson. It's ridiculous. Now they want to talk about porn. What do you want us to do, Jobson? You want us to go out and have sex with multiple women? Because that's all we're left with, but I can't even get that because the only women available to do that with me, and I haven't done it in 4 years now, are huge and gross and hairy underarms and smelly and no thanks. And you want to say that godly Christian women, what does that look like in this culture? The definition of godly Christian women seems to just go hand in glove with Precious Moments figurines and Thomas Kincaid paintings all over the walls. And yeah, no, I'm going to pass. My house doesn't look like a Dobson family house. Look, I have black artwork on my walls. I put up my own wood walls, did all my own sheetrock. Does it matter? I feel like the world's coming to an end soon anyway. Our government's unhinged. I'm not trying to tack focus on the family. I don't hate them. I stood up for them. I went down to the Colorado Capitol with my son when he was little years ago. They had a marriage rally and I supported it. That was a mistake. Because for some reason, nobody told me which side I was which, and we wound our way to the crowd after I parked my truck, and to watch homosexuals saying F you and scream, and my son's looking at me. I said, this is the group over here that's protesting Dobson. I said, they're awful. Listen to what they're saying. I said, that alone is proof that they're totally out of line. But just because you're married as a Christian doesn't mean the Christian marriages don't fall apart. I was a Christian when I've been married. And all the self-help books and stuff wasn't going to make it work. When I don't love somebody and I don't want to have sex with somebody and I don't want to be around somebody anymore, you can throw scripture at me until the cows come home. I'm done. And I'll face the chances or face the consequences of whatever that's going to involve with me and God. And the problem with the Christian church, especially with the older generation, is they will literally write you off as a man for divorcing your wife, especially when you don't have biblical. I lost a friend, but 13 years, he was a homosexual, and he was a homosexual while he was married to his wife, and he'd bring his gay lovers into the living room, Duluth, Minnesota, and anal sex them and everything else. And his wife get home from work and just go and cook her stuff in the kitchen, go into her room. Now, I don't understand why she stayed in that and put up with it, but I've seen some crazy stuff. And when I met him in 1989, God allowed me to reach him. Started coming to the Baptist church I went to. He got saved. And then his wife turned against him. He stopped abusing her, stopped smashing the furniture, got rid of his alcoholism. And his wife came to him. He called me one day to tell him, I'd rather have you back the way you were. You want me having sex with men in the living room floor and busting things up and being verbally yelling at you. And she was not a pretty woman. She was chunky, fat, gross. There was nothing sexy about her. He admitted to me, I don't want to have sex with her. And after he got saved, for years, I had to stand next to him in church. And we'd be singing praises, and he'd sit there trembling and crying. And I said, Jeff, what's wrong? I can't stand with my wife. I said, then divorce her. No, God won't let me do that. And I said, well, he fussed and complained to his men's group, to us, his closest circle of friends, for years. He came to me one day and said that Steve, another member of the church, who was married to a good-looking woman, came up and said, well, you know, Jeff, you need to fulfill your marital duties, and you can't withhold sex from her. And Jeff came to me saying, Steve, I said, did your wife ask you? No, she didn't even want to do that. I said, so what's the problem? You don't want to do it. She don't want to do it. So this is a non-issue. You're not attracted to women anyway, and you're not attracted to her at all. I said, look at Steve's wife. It's easy for him to tell you what to do when he's got a trophy wife next to him. And this is something that is missing in Dobson's ministry. Everything looks really good and packaged and nice, and that works for this group of plastics, superficial Christian people. But it doesn't work for the harsh reality out here. I mean, I agree that marriage is God's way. I drove a bus for years down here with black kids. 75% of the men leave the women. They use them as a cum dump and they leave. And I've seen the effects of that. One of the biggest reasons that we're having a problem in the culture with police and blacks is because blacks aren't taught by men to grow up, buck up, and respect and submit to authority. And you raise a bunch of black boys under an emotionally driven logic, yelling loud black woman, you have a generation of men that never learned how to become men. They're emotionally driven logic with muscles. That is a scary combination. And that is why black men tend to shoot or fight. They don't learn how to reason. They don't learn how to solve conflict or agree to disagree. It's either you pissed me off, I'm going to shoot you or hurt you. So I get it. But what's Dobson doing to reach that community? Nothing. The only kind of blacks that are going to listen to Focus on the Family are the upper middle class black people that don't live in the areas that I live in. Conversely, my channel is not going to reach the snow globe people of Dobsonville. They're not interested in listening to this channel because I say things that's going to get them very angry. I say things that they're not going to listen to. When I said in Hong Kong, Americans don't want to hear truth, that goes for the Focus on the Family crew too. They have their packaged MO. And the way that they get around things is by saying, oh, well, this guy's been divorced. He admits he's got a problem with life. Write him off. Thank God Jesus doesn't do that. God knew what he was dealing with Michael Nelson before I was born. I don't think he sat up there on his throne and said, oh, no, Michael did this. What am I going to do? Oh, too late. People write people off, but God doesn't. The Focus on the Family really wanted to be relevant. They'd have people like me and others on the show that start saying, you know, why don't you start addressing these self-smug, assured women? And no offense, James, no offense, Focus on the Family devotees, but I wouldn't want to be married to any of you women. You're boring and you're passionless and you need to get a life. Because what you call holiness is a culture. It's not holiness as unto the Lord. It's a culture. It's a self-righteous culture. It's a, you know, you got a certain income coming in. You've got kids and, you know, you got that nice little life that you don't know about the rest of us down here. In other words, what I'm trying to say is these programs and ministries are real irrelevant for just about the entire rest of society. Why the fixation on porn? Malcolm Dobson never covers the fact that women on their own give themselves to it because they make good money for it. There are Christian women that are strip dancers, Mr. Dobson. Not only that, you don't ask the question why we're so hooked on it. Women, when they get pregnant, allow their bodies to go to hell. Many women, even Christian women, get so caught up in such lifeless crap of filling their house with Pier 1 imports and boring stuff and, you know, overpriced picture frames with, as for me and my house, that's not what serving God is all about. They're bumper sticker Christians, man. And our society's coming off the rails. And with Focus on the Family and all these so-called ministries on the air, look at 2023. They haven't done a bit of difference, have they? It's getting worse and worse and worse. And the church needs to heal itself, and it's not. Not a man from old school, 80s, before he died in 2015, didn't like this. Said, you're a conservative. And, well, but that doesn't look conservative. You know, there's such a Pharisaism that goes on at all levels. Jesus is God, was God present in front of the Pharisees, and all they did was pick and pick and pick and pick at him and ended up crucifying him and failed to realize you just crucified the Lord, dum-dums. All your little rules, all your little standards, and you just crucified the King of Kings. Okay, you're on one. And again, I learned good things from Focus on the Family. I did. There was a time in my life before I faced the realities I face today that it met a need at the time. I don't just shut it off when I hear it on 91.7. There's other programming, but I'll listen. But if it's a bunch of white women and they're talking about affairs and this and that, I turn it off. I'm sick of it. I'm sick of the white women playing victim and whining about what they've been through. Just the fact that they're whining on a radio station can be heard by so many people. It kind of makes me wonder what the poor husband had to deal with when he was with her. And he finally said, F it. I'm not doing this with her anymore. You know, the church and Christian men in their valiant patriotic duty to honor God, flag, and country. Oh, man tries to beat up a woman, I'm going to tear him up. I'm going to protect the woman. And a lot of men don't like it when I talk about women the way I do, but they need to be talked about because they're not doing a good job. Marriage is not for me. I get that now. Do I still want somebody? Yeah. But married to the same woman day in and day out, they change too much. Or they don't change at all. There's one of those extremes. Me, I've changed. I don't know if I could be married to the same woman day in and day out. If I was married now, I'd marry somebody much younger than me because when I died, I got a house. And I could enjoy a good life with somebody. They get to enjoy the fruit of my labors. And when I leave them with something. That'd probably be the best scenario for me. I don't want to marry a 57-year-old woman in America. Why would I? I talk to women in Thailand and Africa and the Philippines, and it's amazing. 40, 50-year-old women over there, all better looking than 40, 50-year-old women over here. And they're not going to the gym and wearing health meters, and I got to have my doggy. It's such a different world over here, man. And this is just the way I look at it. So I hope somebody can benefit from this video. I'm not anti-Christian. I'm not anti-biblical, but I'm man enough to say I cannot walk as that book commands me. It's an impossibility because you're fighting against this. And when God chose to save me, I don't believe he told me to turn my heart off and become an automaton. Because if that's the case, God could have just made everybody a Christian. He didn't do that. He gave us free will. That means I still have free will to make choices. And I will stand before God. And whatever wood, hay, and stubble I built on that foundation of Jesus is going to burn up. I know all that. I hope to God I've laid some gemstones and precious metals. I'm sure there's some. And there's a lot of wood, hay, and stubble. But the idea that Focus on the Family crowd thinks they're dotting their I's and crossing their T's, they're wrapped up in a culture. And all that culture that they're standing on is going to go like a dandelion when a match hits it. We're raising a generation of spoiled brat kids that don't know how to deal with reality. We're raising a generation of kids that they've been bought and owned by social media and TikTok and everything else. And Christian kids today, I sat in a church in Wheat Ridge, Colorado. Bob Jones University graduates of the pastor and the staff, many of the staff on ministry there. Very self-righteous. Rock music was of the devil. Can't listen to it. I listen to a lot of secular music, and it's not all of the devil. When I look at what Christian music has done today, I just go, you want me to listen to this 7-Eleven choruses? Saying 7 words 11 times? No, I'm not doing it. It seems like we're in an era now where we're burning on fumes. Things seem to be getting worse and worse. And some of these ministries don't seem to be doing anything to address the realities that are in our present age. Men in porn, men in porn. What about women and their addiction to spending and their addiction to self-willed stubbornness against their husbands? What about my ex-wife? When I did leave her, she didn't act Christian. She did some horrible things. Focus on the Family caters to white women. It shouldn't be called Focus on the Family. Just saying. Just saying.